Hello, everybody. How are you doing this fine Thursday? I'm doing quite well. I did want to come over here because guess what? MrBeast done got sued again. So let's talk about that. You might have seen it going around all over the internet in the last few days that MrBeast and Amazon, they have been sued.
MrBeast has been named alongside Amazon in a lawsuit over his upcoming series Beast Games. Participants allege they were subjected to unsafe conditions, sexual harassment, and were not paid. They claimed a production team kept them under surveillance and controlled when they slept and ate, leaving them underfed and overtired.
And they have been sued over the Beast Games reality competition show. I have the lawsuit right here. It is 54 pages long, so we are not going to be doing a line by line, but I did want to read through it, at least to skim, and to tell y'all what it is that actually says in there and give a little bit of my opinion, reaction, and commentary on the suit. As usual, this is not legal advice, and I am not your lawyer. If you need legal advice, please contact a lawyer in your jurisdiction. So let's get into this lawsuit. As you can see at the top right-hand corner, it was filed just 3 days ago in the morning in the Superior Court of California. It is a redacted document. That means you should expect to see a bunch of those black bars going right through the middle of a bunch of words and keeping the information from the public. I do not obviously have access to the other documents. In fact, let me show you what the court website actually looks like. Here is the Los Angeles LAcourt.org landing page where it shows you all of the documents that have been filed in this case. And as you can see, all of the documents that were ever filed in this case were all filed 3 days ago on September 16th, 2024. We have a summons, we have the complaint that I had pulled up that we are about to read, the cover sheet, which is just a form, alternate dispute resolution packet, which is standard in these civil cases, and then the notice of case assignment. So the only really truly substantive document that's been filed in this case is the one that we were just looking at. So let me pull it back up. Okay, and I like to look up here at the top just to see who's representing who, but I don't recognize any of these people, so moving on. Looks like there are 5 plaintiffs, but they don't give names, contestants 1 through 5, and then the defendants are listed as MrB 2024 LLC, a North Carolina LLC, Off One's Base LLC, another North Carolina limited liability company, and Amazon Alternative LLC, a California limited liability company. Okay, so these are the ones that are getting sued. It's MrB 2024, Off One's Base, and Amazon Alternative. Now, what are they actually getting sued for? Well, a bunch of stuff. Failure to pay minimum wages, liquidated damages for failure to pay the wages, overtime, and then this one is a big one. Harassment is actually a cause of action listed in this lawsuit, which was very important and material to me. Failure to prevent this harassment, negligent infliction of emotional distress, failure to provide uninterrupted meal breaks, failure to provide uninterrupted rest breaks, failure to pay wages, failure to provide accurate itemized wage statements, failure to indemnify for employee expenses and losses, unfair business practices, false advertising, and then also for declaratory relief. So then we get into the table of contents, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because I just want to read in the actual document, and I feel like that would be a waste of time. It's like redundant. So the document finally gets started around page 5 of the actual document, and it starts by saying contestants 1 through 5 collectively are the plaintiffs, and it says individually and on behalf of the proposed class allege the following. Okay, so this is what the plaintiffs are alleging. Now, you're going to see this capital proposed class quite a bit, and that's just a term of art for the specific type of lawsuit that this is, which is a class action lawsuit. So anyone suing would need to join in on this particular lawsuit instead of suing MrBeast on their end, which sometimes can end up being kind of unfair, but there's also exclusions and stuff like that. But just know that for the purposes of reading this lawsuit today, this proposed class thing means that there are more plaintiffs here that could join and probably that are already included as plaintiffs, but they just listed these 5 here. And they didn't want to tell us their names because apparently they were afraid that they were going to be perhaps violating their NDA, and also they were afraid of some type of retaliation. Now, MrBeast could request to unseal who is suing him. I don't know if that would easily be granted, but that is something he could request because we do have the right to confront our accusers in court. You can't like anonymously file a court document. But again, all of that really does come down to the details, and that's not really why we're here. So what are the allegations in this complaint? The introduction starts off by saying, the plaintiffs bring this action on behalf of themselves and a proposed class consisting of who? Who is this class of people that is suing Mr. Beast? Quote, all individuals who were engaged as purported contestants in the Beast Games content production. Now, it does go on to specify something else, but that is redacted, as you can see, the big black bar. So I don't know that any more than you what that says. The introduction goes on to say, quote, defendant production companies and Amazon shamelessly exploited the labor of approximately redacted people who served as contestants on the forthcoming $100 million Mr. Beast Amazon production Beast Games, which Amazon promotes as the world's largest live game show with the biggest single prize in the history of television and streaming. The Beast Games entertainment value arises directly from the physical and emotional labor of the contestants who compete under pressure cooker conditions for life-changing prize money, with one person purportedly to win $5 million. Okay, so this is important because their whole argument is going to end up depending on this assumption here. The Beast Games entertainment value arises directly from the physical and emotional labor of the contestants, okay? And what are these contestants doing according to this lawsuit? They're competing under pressure cooker conditions for life-changing prize money, with one person purportedly to win $5 million.
I think it's wrong to dangle this huge prize money, a $5 million carrot, in front of people's faces who really need it and take advantage. I don't think it's okay to actually shoot shows that are like the Hunger Games.
It goes on to say, defendant MRB 2024 is a production company believed to be owned by Jimmy, the creator and face of the YouTube-originated MrBeast brand. Jimmy is a 26-year-old content creator, most YouTube subscribers in the world. His entertainment empire produces stunt philanthropy, which typically features MrBeast performing corporate-sponsored, attention-getting philanthropy for publicity. Now, this part right here I found to be interesting, important, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to call your attention to it. See the little red box around it. The lawsuit says the business model essentially is that Mr. Beast performs giving away some corporate money, whether pallets of cash, cars, or even houses to strangers or followers, and his corporate sponsors compensate him with even more money. Okay? This lawsuit is trying to say that Mr. Beast's stunt philanthropy business model is that Mr. Beast gives away some money from a sponsor or a car that a sponsor bought or whatever, but then he himself receives even more money than he's given away. That's what's being alleged here as the business model of Mr. Beast. Okay, another thing I found really interesting because I am a little bit of a Survivor fan. Defendant Amazon Alternative is on information and belief the unscripted television division of Amazon Studios, which purportedly was previously run by Mark Burnett at MGM Worldwide Television Group before Amazon Studios acquired the division in the Amazon MGM merger. And a brief Google search of this MGM merger, it says that Amazon purchased MGM in May 2021, but was waiting on approval from government regulators before the deal could be finalized. The companies announced the deal closed Thursday, this was in 2022, after a mid-March deadline for the Federal Trade Commission to object to the deal passed without the commission filing any complaints. Okay, so about a year and a half ago is whenever Amazon purchased MGM, and specifically what we're talking about in this particular lawsuit is the MGM division that was formerly run by Mark Burnett. Well, Mark Burnett should sound familiar to you because he's the creator and still to this day executive producer of Survivor.
So while I was pitching Eco Challenge, and Lauren had told me this really, what she thought, nutty idea, but they had potential from Charlie Parsons, a British producer. That the idea was there was like a billionaire on a yacht offshore of an island, and a number of people would be on that island, and through the game, the billionaire on the yacht would eliminate people week by week. Billionaire on the yacht would eliminate people week by week from the island. That was the essence of what I was told. What immediately appealed to me was the idea of people building a society on island, a la Swiss Family Robinson, Robinson Crusoe, Lord of the Flies.
So that was important to me because how many people have said, why are you surprised that Mr. Beast scripts his competition shows? Because Survivor's been doing that for years. It's like, oh, girl, did the people in charge of Survivor actually maybe legitimately actually help design these Beast games? I'm just curious. I don't know. But just to be very clear, it does say that it was previously run by Mark Burnett at MGM. The acquisition happened last year, 2 years ago. So I don't know that Mark Burnett had anything to do with Beast Games. Okay. I'm just reading it from the public record, just like you, right here off of this lawsuit. I really don't know. Amazon Alternative creates content for Amazon's Prime streaming service, which boasts over 200 million paid subscribers. And I just want to put it right here in the public record. My psychic vision from the mothership is that Amazon and Logan Paul are in business bed together, and that is why he is allowed to use Prime as Prime Energy. But girl, don't listen to me. There's also this Lunchable link up with Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast does have the Amazon ties now through the Beast Games, and they're getting sued together. They're co-defendants. So I don't know. I'm just putting it right here. I'm just marking it right here in case that ever comes to fruition in any way. I want to be on the record. Okay, the lawsuit goes on to say these two commercial giants, Mr. Beast and Amazon, partnered with production company defendant Off One's Base LLC to produce Beast Games, which would be filmed in redacted. Jimmy, who has publicly represented that all Mr. Beast contestants get paid if they compete for just 5 minutes, gushed to his fans online about the bigger than ever scale of the Amazon-sponsored Beast Games. He stated that money was not a constraint and that Amazon had given Jimmy, quote, all creative control.
Prime Video now announcing Beast Games, a new series set to feature 1,000 contestants vying for a $5 million prize. That's a big one. Mr. Beast is going to host and executive produce the series. It's based obviously on his YouTube show. It promises to raise the stakes of his fast-paced, high-production format to make Beast Games the biggest reality competition series ever. You know, we had that Squid Games on Netflix. Yeah. It was just south of $5 million for its price. That was a big one. This one, the biggest. Wow.
Greenville, North Carolina native and YouTube star Mr. Beast is launching a new reality competition show on Prime Video. It's called Beast Games. He says it will be the largest game show in history and will break many world records. Netflix previously claimed the record for most contestants and biggest cash prize with its Squid Game.
And the ability to do, quote, whatever he wanted.
Obviously, I'm the biggest YouTuber in the world, so like just by nature, I will have more leverage than anyone else. And even me, I'm having to tell these people, they should just let me do what I think is good content. Because I've built a track record and I've proven myself. I've proven myself more than any YouTuber could ever hope to prove himself. And even with me, a lot of platforms just don't trust you. They want creative control. They want control of the edit. So like they don't like things, they cut it out, or they can make you put things in or fabricate things. If they have control of the edit, you basically decide everything. The narrative, what goes in, what goes out, especially with a certain platform that I don't need to go in depth on. That like platform had the control of the edit, and then the jokes were removed. They forced them to put certain things in because quotas and other stuff, and it just kills it, and then it flops. And creators like, this is what my fans were expecting. And that's a recurring theme. So hopefully if this does well, people can go, look, they trusted Jimmy and look what he delivered, trust me.
Unfortunately, Mr. Beast did not use the alleged unconstrained resources to provide fair wages or even bare minimum legal working conditions to the redacted contestants whose labor comprised the core commercial value of the Beast Games. Again, they're still alleging that the contestants' labor in and of itself is the whole value of the games. Without the contestants' labor, and it's not just appearance, it's not just like, oh, the contestants sat there and looked cute. It's specifically they're alleging there was labor, like the legal definition of labor, like an employee does. And without this type of labor, there would be no Beast Games, is what this lawsuit is trying to argue. Instead, defendants, that's Jimmy and Amazon and them, employed superior bargaining power to coerce the contestants to sign unconscionable contracts with illegal terms and illusory obligations, and also knowingly mischaracterized the contestants redacted to avoid defendants' employment obligations under California law. Defendants knowingly misclassified the contestants in part to obtain a tax credit for $2,252,523 from the state of Nevada, which defendants on information and belief would not have received had they disclosed the production's actual labor costs. Okay, so what the allegation is here, and I have a whole conspiracy theory, but I'll save it till the end, that yes, the contestants are suing, but really I believe, this is just conspiracy theory that I'll save for mostly to the end, but I'll mark it here. I believe this lawsuit is being either financed or somehow encouraged or pushed by a business competitor of Mr. Beast. That is what I believe. I do not know if that is true. It is just a belief. It is just an opinion. I don't even know which one it could be. I'll tell you why I think that later. Okay. So, what this part of the lawsuit is saying is look, without these 1,000, 2,000, whatever contestants work, there would be no Beast Games. And Jimmy is supposed to be considering these people as employees based on how they are expected to work and stuff like that. And there's a lot of reasons that they give, a lot of fallout that happens from this supposed misclassification of employees as contestants. And one such fallout is this right here. The contestants, the plaintiffs are saying if Jimmy and Amazon and them didn't improperly classify these contestants as whatever it is, it's redacted. I don't know what they classified it as, volunteers, maybe extras. I don't know what they classified them as. It's redacted. But this lawsuit is saying if Jimmy would have appropriately classified these people as employees, he wouldn't have been able to get this $2.2 million tax credit from the state of Nevada. So they're saying not only did he misclassify the employees and there was a bunch of fallout for them and everything else, but he also unjustly and unlawfully financially benefited or enriched himself off of this misclassification. The lawsuit goes on to say that the defendants, Jimmy and Amazon, induced Redacted to serve as contestants for their $100 million production based on false representations. Okay. That 1,000 people would be competing to win $5 million. And then y'all already know about this bait and switch because we've heard about it in the news, but it was like people got there, took off work. Some of them quit their jobs just for the chance to compete for this $5 million. And they thought they were going to be competing against 1,000 people. Come to find out, it was actually approximately 2,000 people that showed up. Now, this has been widely reported in the media and in the news. I don't know if it's true. I'm just telling you what's been reported. The lawsuit goes on to say the defendants further relied on the misclassification as a false justification to avoid paying employment taxes and to spare the production costs of implementing various employment protections. Okay. So this is just another fallout from this so-called alleged misclassification that Jimmy and Amazon are calling people contestants or maybe volunteers or whatever, but really they should be calling them employees. They should be being treated as such. And Jimmy is avoiding calling them employees so that he can avoid his legal responsibilities. That's what's being alleged. Some of those legal responsibilities include financial responsibilities like employment taxes or production costs of implementing various employment protections required under the law, which could be something to do with those union workers or whatever. They do enumerate a little list here, including minimum wages, overtime, mandatory meal and rest breaks, workers' compensation benefits, itemized wage statements, and timely payment of wages. Okay, so there's a bunch of causes of action. There's a bunch of things they're suing for in this lawsuit. But one of the big primary things that does get mentioned, addressed in this complaint many times is this employment designation. Now, from that, the lawyers do base a bunch of arguments, okay? Even the S harassment argument does legally depend on the people, the contestants, the people suing, being legally classified as employees. So, long story short, TLDR put another way, if a court doesn't agree with the plaintiffs that they were employees under the law, then most of these claims are just going to fall away because most of the claims depend on a court agreeing with the plaintiffs that are suing that they were actually, in fact, employees. Now, I do think they have a strong argument, but what I predict is this is going to be a mess. It is going to be a precedential setting legal case because first of all, it's the biggest reality show or the biggest unscripted, whatever they're calling it in the world ever. The most contestants that have ever competed for anything ever. So in and of itself, just the size of it is going to be huge. Also, it's $100 million show. The financial size of it is going to be huge. But if this lawsuit can hold up against MrBeast, I don't see how it can't hold up against Netflix and like Love is Blind or Love Island or The Bachelor, because a lot of the stuff that they rely on in this lawsuit to show and prove to the judge that these contestants were actually employees, I think it's industry standard. Let me show you what I'm talking about. They were subjected to unreasonable, unsafe, unlawful employment conditions. Okay, so then we get a bunch of redacted stuff, but let's just breeze through real quick. Defendants began the Beast Games by redacted, where the contestants were held under strict control and surveillance for days on end. During the Beast Games engagement, the on-set production staff maintained the strictest control over the contestants, denying them all privacy and access to the outside world. The contestants were fed sporadically and sparsely. They were not given adequate access to hygiene products or medical care. And then they quote the New York Times article that came out recently. The New York Times reported that, quote, over a dozen people who participated in the first installment of Beast Games said they had not received adequate food or medical care. And some competitors had suffered serious injuries from the physical challenges. Okay, we've talked about that before. The lawsuit goes on to say the female contestants particularly and collectively suffered as a result of Jimmy and Amazon's actions. The Beast Games work environment systematically fostered a culture of misogyny and sexism where production staff did nothing while, and then I don't know what this says, but I'd love to know, redacted. So they did nothing. The production staff did nothing while, and then there's all this redacted. Female contestants were also denied redacted. Defendants callously dismissed redacted. Then they go into the jurisdiction, they name the parties. Okay, so then we get to the facts section. And this is where they're alleging some of the facts that happened. The first, section A, is the contestants engaged in what appeared to be a thorough application and vetting process for Beast Games. So this is the part of the lawsuit where they're about to try and lay out, look, Your Honor, first and foremost, first order of business, these contestants were employees. Remember, I told y'all a lot of the whole rest of the lawsuit depends on the judge agreeing on this fact, because a lot of their legal precedent that they rely on are employment statutes, employment discrimination statutes. And if these people are employees, then Jimmy and Amazon didn't owe them those duties. So I predict that Jimmy and Amazon are going to rigorously respond and say that if they respond at all, they might settle. But I do predict if they're going to respond, their response will primarily deal with rebutting this allegation that they were employers, but rather they were hosts of a competition or something. Also, I would predict that MrBeast and his lawyers and Amazon's lawyers would rely on the industry standard reality, unscripted or semi-scripted shows such as Survivor, Love is Blind, Love Island, all of that stuff, and say, look, listen, hold on. If there are employees, then they're all employees over there at Netflix on them shows too. That's what I would expect them to come back with. Okay, the lawsuit goes on, paragraph 28. The first step in the application process was to submit redacted. Okay, so this part of the lawsuit, they're trying to show that, look, Your Honor, just like an employee, they had to do an application process. Now, in and of itself, that's not going to be enough to survive, but they're going to go through each category. So I'm just pointing those out for y'all. The contestants who were selected and agreed to serve as contestants participated in what they thought or what appeared to be a thorough application and contestant vetting process. They talk about the steps. Paragraph 29 says, once accepted, the contestants were required to put their lives on hold to provide labor exclusively for defendants. That is one of the factors in this analysis is, were the employees or were the people, were the plaintiffs allowed to do their other work? Were they allowed to work on anything else? Or did they exclusively only have to work for defendants? There's a whole list of stuff that a court in the framework would consider. And it has to do like, do you have control over your schedule? Do you have control over where you work? Do you have control over when you work? Do you have control over working for other people? Did you have to sign an NDA? There's all these factors that a judge will consider, and none of them are in and of themselves dispositive. So they're just outlining all the factors. They had to provide labor exclusively for MrBeast and Amazon and them in exchange for compensation and a chance to win $5 million prize. So they were all promised that they would be compensated something no matter what, just for competing. That's what we're being told now twice in this lawsuit, maybe 3 times. The contestants incurred supposedly reimbursable business-related travel expenses, but many, including contestants 2 and 3, have not been reimbursed. The lawsuit goes on in this subsection B of the facts section. It says the contestant agreements that the contestants entered into with production defendants included redacted. So we don't know what this says. Subsection C says contestants were employees under California law, but defendants intentionally misclassified them to their own economic advantage. So Amazon and Jimmy misclassified them. We've spoken about this at length already, so I'm not going to belabor the point. Jimmy and Amazon wrongfully and willfully misclassified and, on information and belief, continue to wrongfully misclassify contestants, although they should legally be classified as employees. If I had to guess what this redacted part says, it probably just has a list of stuff. They continue to wrongfully misclassify the contestants as misclassify the contestants as volunteers, extras, production assistants, whatever. I mean, it probably has a list of stuff. The contestant agreement they signed states on its face that the contestants redacted, but the arrangement was in fact an employment arrangement. So they're saying, yeah, Your Honor, just because Jimmy and Amazon don't want to live up to their legal liabilities as employers, and they just want to call their employees leprechauns and extras, that has nothing to do with the fact that they were actually employees, and the law still implies. That's what they're kind of trying to say. They were not volunteers. They were promised to receive compensation in exchange for their services. It's a for-profit company in the business of making audio-visual programming, including for distribution on the video platform YouTube and Amazon Prime Video. The contestants were promised and received compensation in exchange for their redacted on Beast productions. Additionally, Jimmy made public statements online that he had unconstrained control over the Beast games, and Jimmy had established a pattern and practice of compensating everyone who competes in Mr. Beast competitions, win or lose, even if they compete for only 5 minutes. The contestants in the Beast Games were not working for free or for any humanitarian or any other public service or charitable objective. So the fact that they include a part right here about volunteers, it leads me to believe that maybe one of the classifications that Jimmy and Amazon were using with people were volunteers or interns or extras, because why would they spend so many paragraphs? I mean, it's like, what, 3 paragraphs? Information to believe. Look, contestants were not volunteers, not working for free for a humanitarian service. They were hired to work as contestants on a reality competition show. The contestants were the essential labor component. We read that already. Defendants compensated them throughout the course of the Beast Games with both in-kind compensation as well as cash compensation. Defendants promising to every contestant that redacted. Now, this part right here reminded me of some of the allegations that Jake Weddle had made about his time on the Beast productions, as well as 52 games. He also said, he wanted to leave, but didn't really feel like he could because he felt maybe a little pressured. So that's what we're kind of getting here in this lawsuit. Look at what it says at paragraph 41. Throughout the Beast Games engagement, the contestants were induced to remain competing, as defendants made clear to all contestants that redacted. But whatever is redacted is something that's supposed to support the allegation that the contestants were induced or coerced or pressured, right? Like, what does induced mean? Defendants have since requested and plaintiffs have provided maybe reimbursement from the contestants to pay them and also reimburse them for expenses. I don't really know what that means. Okay, so another feature that a judge or a court will look at whenever determining whether someone was an employee or a contestant or an employee or a contractor has to do with how much control or autonomy the worker had over their work. Here it says the contestants had none. No autonomy. Jimmy and Amazon exercised complete control over them. Defendants exercised total control over the manner, means, and timing of the work performed by the contestants by controlling essentially every aspect of their lives during the production. So the lawsuit is saying, look, Your Honor, not only were Amazon and Jimmy controlling the work, they were controlling every aspect of these people's lives, including requiring redacted, controlling redacted, and a bunch of redacted stuff. It's like 7 things. Paragraph 45 said defendants, that's Amazon and Jimmy, required contestants to be physically present on specific dates and times around the clock at locations dictated, controlled, and supervised by defendants. They also controlled which dates and locations they had to go to. Jimmy and Amazon required plaintiffs dedicate all of their time to the production during the production period. So they couldn't work on anything else. They couldn't work on any other projects. Remember that analysis about how much control, how much time, when and where, and all that? This is just more of those factors that they're throwing in a bucket to try and show the judge these are employees. Again, if a judge decides that these are employees, the whole entire reality show world is going to come crumbling down very soon, aka busted wide open. Look at this, requiring them to miss work if they had other jobs, Defendants also purport to control, and then it's redacted. Then they just list a bunch of other stuff I'm going to rapid fire go through. Access to personal belongings, restricted their movement. They didn't allow them to contact people. There was no contact orders. There was a Beast Games rules packet. They controlled their meals. Defendants control when, where, and what the contestants ate. The limited sustenance that defendants provided afforded an unreasonable and insufficient caloric intake. So they didn't give them enough calories at all to sustain a regular human diet, much less doing all these activities, which collectively and in a uniform manner endangered the health and welfare of the contestants. During their time, the contestants had to suffer through redacted. When Jimmy and Amazon allowed the contestants to have food, redacted, they also controlled their clothing. That's one of the factors in the employment versus contractor analysis is, do you have to wear a uniform? If you have to wear a uniform, is it provided to you by the employer? These are factors which would influence the outcome of a judge's decision. Defendants controlled the clothing the contestants wore. One day, defendants corralled the contestants and then redacted. They controlled their sleeping arrangements and where they slept. And even if they slept, look, defendants controlled where, how, and whether the contestants slept. And yet again, we have another corroboration from Jake Weddle. He said he was pretty much sleep deprived on purpose because they refused to turn the lights off, which is straight out of the Project Artichoke. Girl, go look it up. Okay. Control over medications and recreational substances, I thought was interesting because they're talking about like just beer, or are they talking about other Nevada recreational? You know what? It's redacted. We don't know. But it says upon their arrival, defendants separated the contestants, redacted. They also did not allow contestants to redacted. And I think that might mean like, I don't know, maybe smoke their medical weed or something, girl, I don't know. And then they also say they exposed these contestants to dangerous conditions in and of themselves, the challenges, but also they didn't do background checks. And they have this tweet from fellow queen of YouTube, Rosanna Pansino, where she had said there was 5 contestants that verified from her. A man named Armani Izzati was allowed to compete, but he was previously charged with 20 counts of battery, kidnapping, pandering, pimping, and robbery. He pled guilty to the pimping charge, acknowledging the significant evidence against him. He also allegedly slept near female contestants before being kicked off set for inappropriate behavior. Some of the female contestants confirmed being very uncomfortable around him. He is also friends with Jake Paul and other influencers. Why was there not adequate background checks? And wasn't Jake Paul or maybe Logan Paul, one of them, the one that they like faked Rosanna's show to make it look like one of them Paul brothers won and actually it was her in the second place spot or whatever? Somebody put it in the comments. I'm in a little bit of a rush right now, so I don't have time to look it up. But on information, I believe there was insufficient medical staff to attend to potential and actual injuries during the production. There were several reports of injuries. For example, in an online article, Scott Robin of the Vital Vegas reported in July 2024 that, quote, in a concerning twist to this story, a source claims Desert Springs Hospital has seen countless patients today coming from Beast Games due to lack of food and water. They also, it's alleged, had contractual control, forcing defendants to sign an unenforceable adhesion contract agreement. An adhesion agreement is one where you don't get to negotiate. It's kind of like when somebody plops a contract down in front of you and says, sign it or don't. You don't get to change not one thing. That's called an adhesion contract. Take it or leave it. And sometimes those contracts can be considered to be unenforceable and even voidable, depending on the relationship between the parties. And so in this part of the court case, they're saying there was not like reasonable negotiation opportunity. It was unconscionable, like kind of like just not really fair. So because of that, it's not enforceable. And then it says it also unlawfully prohibits the contestants from redacted. So the lawsuit goes on to outline in detail those arguments about the employment definition. Were they employees? Were they not? And all that, right? So we're seeing these same arguments again. We're not going to read them. This is the people that are absolutely vital for this production. And don't let MrBeast tell you otherwise. Failed to provide a safe and healthful place of employment to the particular and collective detriment of the female contestants. So now we're going to get into the part about the female contestants being disparately impacted. And this is a protected group because it would be based on the basis of gender. Just to be very clear, I'm not alleging that this happened. I wasn't there. I don't know if any of the stuff they're saying is even true. And even if it is true, I don't know if it actually is unfair labor practices. This is stuff that's very technical and tedious, and I'm not even going to opine. I'm just reading this. But this is the part where they do go in to talk about the mistreatment of the female contestants, and specifically, this harassment thing. It says production defendants, that's Amazon, Jimmy, and them, also failed to provide a safe and helpful place to work in violation of Labor Code Section 6300. Okay. Again, this is labor code. So in order for this to stick, in order for this to apply, in order for the harassment charges to stick, a judge has to decide or determine that these were employees. And again, I told y'all, to determine that these are employees is going to rattle the foundation of the reality unscripted world to its core. It's going to change the way that they all have to classify and do things. But it will be the only way that this harassment allegation can stick, that they can be liable for it, because the only law that they rely on is a labor code, which is for employees. Production defendants created working conditions that jeopardize the safety of workers, including not providing sufficient food or drink, taking away access to blank, not having adequate medical staff on site, forcing them not to sleep. Again, this is what Jake Weddle said happened to him, and forcing them to participate in games that unreasonably risked physical and mental injury. Production defendants additionally created toxic and hostile working environment for particularly the female contestants who suffered redacted, as well as harassment throughout the production. As more fully detailed below, which was not only noticed but allowed and even, does that say encouraged by the production defendants? Why did they, what is this redacted? Not only, the harassment was not only noticed by Amazon and in MRB 2024, but even by them. I don't know. I think it says encouraged, but I don't know. Look at this. Apparently, this, perhaps encouragement or whatever, and allowance of harassment behaviors, it says apparently was allowed because of marching orders from the top. Who is that? Is it Sue? Susan Marie King Donaldson Perisher? Is it Jimmy? Is it James? Okay, so then this, I think, actually, a lot of people wanted to clown on Dogpack, which this is a Dogpack Stan account. But this part of the lawsuit actually supports what he was saying. Remember when he showed us that employee production manual? It's being cited right here in a court case. Purported How to Succeed in MrBeast Production Handbook states that it's okay for the boys to be childish, and if talent wants to draw a bleep on the whiteboard in the video or do something stupid, let them. Really, do everything you can to empower the boys when filming and help them make content. Help them be idiots. So we've already seen that, and then they cite it there. Okay, this part is so redacted, but I think it has to do with violence and harassment against contestants. Helping the boys make content apparently translated to redacted. The apparent MrBeast ethos of helping the boys be idiots seemed to pave the way for production staff to allow. Who knows? Could it be one of those things that Dogpack was talking about? I don't know. On information and belief redacted, contestants 4 and 5 experiences, as further detailed below, corroborate these reports. While the production staff initially stated blank, contestant 4 and 5's experiences, as further detailed below, corroborate these reports. And look at paragraph 77. What does it say? Additionally, defendants knew or should have known, because its own employment handbook, as detailed above, and it's not an employment handbook, it's a production handbook, a production manual, as detailed above, laid the groundwork for this collective sexual harassment and sexual harassment against female employees. So again, look, I can't tell you what it says. Your guess is as good as mine. But it's clear what this conclusion is. Defendants, Jimmy and Amazon, knew or should have known something, because its own handbook, as detailed above, laid the groundwork for this collective harassment and sexual harassment against female employees. And then they refused to intervene into something. They created, permitted to exist, and fostered a culture and pattern practice of harassment, including in the form of a hostile working environment. So it's like, y'all wanted to clown on Dawson all day, every day, But now it's being alleged by 5 people from the Beast Games that this is the culture of the place. So Beast Games created hostile conditions where women were forced to endure the severe embarrassment and unfair disadvantage of, and then I don't know what this is. Maybe it's to do with the hygiene products. I do not know. And look at paragraph 83. Defendant management and up to and including senior management and ownership had actual or constructive notice that the violence and sexual harassment detailed herein was occurring within the workplace. Then it goes on to talk about how the defendants were basically lied to and set up, where they were told, you're going to be paid no matter what. There's only going to be 1,000 people. Like all this stuff ended up not being true, which we already outlined that. Food, water, and all that denied. This part is interesting. Rosanna did say this, but I had maybe not seen it or maybe forgot. The Beast Games production was so void of standards of reasonable care that Mr. Beast allegedly offered to cover the contestants' therapy. Now, I don't know what paragraph 103 says. I mean, obviously, your guess is as good as mine. But look at the very end of the paragraph down by line 25. Contestant 4 understood that they would be compensated by defendants for her services, right? It says a female. Contestant 4, a female, was employed by defendants. She understood she would be compensated for her services. As of the date of the filing of this complaint, contestant 4 still not received compensation promised. Contestant 5, also a female, was employed by defendants. They arranged all this redacted. She understood that she would be compensated. As of the day of the filing, she had not been compensated. And then they get into trying to prove that they are a class and a subclass, which this is all just technicality stuff to make sure that the class action designation actually applies. Okay, then they get into the sexual harassment stuff. And again, I've already talked about this. I do just want to point it out. The whole count, the entire allegation of sexual harassment depends entirely on a judge agreeing with a rather unprecedented theory that contestants in a reality show are de facto employees. But that is what the sexual harassment claim does hinge upon. And in that labor code in the statute, it imposes a duty on a defendant to refrain from harassing an employee on the basis of any gender or sexual characteristics. Under the same statutes, maybe different sections or whatever, the labor codes, failure to prevent harassment. So not only they have a duty to not harass your employee, but you also have a duty as employer to prevent harassment against your employees. There's also a negligent infliction of emotional distress claim, and those almost never actually succeed, but they always throw them there at the end. Again, failure to provide meal breaks. That is a labor code. If they are not employees, then this labor code does not apply. Failure to provide uninterrupted rest breaks. You get deja vu yet? Same thing. If these people are not employees, you cannot argue a labor code. Failure to provide wages promptly. Another labor code. Failure to provide accurate and itemized wage statements, another labor code. Failure to indemnify for employee expenses, unfair business practices. And this part is why I think this lawsuit might be motivated by maybe some people that are in the competitive, that are in business competition with Mr. Beast, like maybe sponsoring this lawsuit or maybe encouraging it or something like that. Unfair business practices sounds really familiar to the A3 Media versus Night Media lawsuit, which I'm just going to have to cover soon because I keep referencing it. But it was similar allegations saying that Jimmy's long-time management company, which is no longer allegedly managing him, even though the owner of the management company still owns intellectual property and Feastables, but that's neither here nor there. That company, the management company, Night Media, Reed Duxker, got sued by A3 Media for what? For illegally, allegedly, right? This lawsuit hasn't been decided. I think it's settled or maybe it got dismissed somehow. But the allegation is that Jimmy's former management company, Night Media, similarly misclassified themselves. Instead of classifying themselves as an agency, a talent agency, they classified themselves as something else, even though they were doing talent agency functions, and it resulted in an unfair business practice claim. Well, now we have unfair business practices. And yeah, I understand you do have to just kind of throw it at the wall and see what sticks when you're suing somebody. It seems like somebody else might be mad about the $2 million tax credit because of the misclassification. It seems like maybe I don't know. Just for example, like, could it be Disney? Could it be, Disney and Amazon are the same, aren't they? Could it be Netflix? You know what I mean? It's like, this is huge competitor in the market, the biggest YouTube channel of all time. So I don't know. That's my conspiracy theory. Again, they really focus on this $2 million tax credit, false information to the state of Nevada, proposed class to enter into illegal contracts. And then finally, on page 48, paragraph 184, we finally get the first statute that seems to not be labor-based or employee-based. And this one has to do with a contest or a sweepstakes. And it says, so in addition to all that, Jimmy and Amazon also allege an unfair competition claim derived from Jimmy and Amazon's violation of California Business and Professions Code, which prohibits any person in the operation of any contest or sweepstakes from misrepresenting the manner or the odds of winning any prize. Here, Jimmy and Amazon misrepresented to prospective contestants that if they were selected and agreed, they would be competing against 1,000 people for $5 million. However, they discovered later that it was not 1,000. It was like 2,000 or whatever. They're also saying that Jimmy is a danger to the public. And as a result, the judge needs to stop him from doing all this stuff. And specifically, they want the judge to force Jimmy and Amazon and them to truthfully represent the conditions of the Beast Games, including the number of contestants, before potential contestants apply to participate, to equitably conduct the Beast Games so that women are not unfairly disadvantaged, and accurately classify future contestants as employees rather than blank or independent contractors. Then again, they go the false advertising. We've talked about this. They made allegedly false statements to induce the contestants to joining. And then again, they do finally cite at the very end this little contest sweepstakes law, but pretty much everything else depends on the labor stuff. And that'll pretty much do it for that lawsuit. I do have some more things to talk about. I did some side research on the businesses, the companies, the ownership, and the structure, but I do have court in an hour, so I got to get going. But that's all I really have for today. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation, and neither is reading a public lawsuit. Love you, mean it. Okay, bye. Welcome into my world. You're playing my game. Thought that you could come up and they're fitting off of my name. Talking out the side of your neck like you're insane. Cortisol levels to the roof. Inflame. Kids these days so shameless. Selling out real friends for a paycheck. Mama didn't teach them no home training. Wanna be me so bad, but they failing. Step to the plate though. I'll take a challenger. I ain't scared of no low life scavenger. I should warn you though, if you haven't heard, I know Colleen ukulele ballanger. Shots been fired. Wanna tell that? Say it to my face though. Not behind my back. Won't be long till you share it in the group chat. And when I call you up, you're gonna backtrack. And you should've kept my name out your mouth.